So I'm talking today with Jane Kaye, and I thought I would start actually just by letting you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your current position, your training, how you got there, anything that you think would be relevant for the rest of the conversation.
So I direct the Centre for Health Law and Emerging Technologies in the Nuffield Department of Population Health at the University of Oxford. And I set up Helix in 2009. We are an interdisciplinary research team focusing primarily on genomics, but with a real interest in how emerging technologies affect scientific practice and research governance.
And can you give us examples of the types of projects you're working on?
So we are working on a project called Dynamic Consent, which is developing a patient portal to enable patients or citizens to give consent to the use of samples and information for research purposes, but also to be recruited into new studies.
And can you give us a little of an idea, particularly with respect to human genome sequences, what consent really could look like in a way that would benefit both the participants and science and society in general?
I think the most important thing is that consent is a very important part of a democratic society. It's about people being able to exercise their autonomy, to be asked about the things that they're involved in, and to be able to determine what those things are. And genomics is really all about information, and we're rapidly moving into an information age where the concern is how personal information is used and who has access to it. And we have developed different types of consent for different types of studies. So there's a broad consent, which is now kind of a practical alternative to the very specific informed consent that you get for clinical trials. We have people who are talking about portable legal consent, where you can give consent to the use of your sequence information, and basically that just allows different kinds of researchers to use it, and it's put in a repository. And I think that's what is really interesting, that in actual fact there are different kinds of consents for different kinds of interventions or for people becoming involved in research.
So I noticed just yesterday there was an announcement of the Personal Genome Project in the UK, in which I believe you have a leadership role. Can you tell us a little about that project and your role?
Yes. So my role in the project is actually to ensure that the recruits to the project are properly looked after. So I'm looking at the ELSI issues in that, the ethical, legal and social implications of the project. So that project has an open consent, and the open consent is that it means that you're actually consenting to become an active collaborator in the project, but also you're consenting to put your sequence data and any medical trait data that you upload onto the website, you're putting it up there so that it's open to the world. It's on the internet. Now, to make sure that people really know what they're on about, there's 2 stages to recruitment. So the first stage is actually you apply, you set up an account, and then you're assessed for your eligibility, basically making sure that you're over 18 and you're a UK citizen. The second stage is that you actually have to complete an online examination, and you have to get 100% in that exam before you're even considered to enter the project. Then once you enter the project, you're actually required to sign a 19-page information, an informed consent form, which actually says that your data will be out there. There is no way that we can promise the confidentiality of that data. We know that it is possible, even if we remove your name and identifiers, your immediate identifiers, that the richness of the data that you provide will actually mean that you will be identifiable. And for that reason, some participants in the US have actually included their name. It's a project for information altruists. It's a project for people who are really keen to support science and recognise the value of open access scientific data. So it's not for everyone. Once your DNA has been sequenced, then you have 30 days to decide whether it goes live or not. And so people can actually get professional help with actually understanding what is in their sequence, and we will direct people to healthcare professionals who can actually do that, because of course that's an issue. But once people are in the project, then that data can be removed if they decide to withdraw later on. But once it's been used by the researchers, it's out there. So people have to understand that and the implications of that. And we ask people to actually have a proxy who can consent on their behalf when, if they become infirm or unable to consent. Mm-hmm. And we also ask them to discuss this really carefully with other family members. Mm-hmm. As part of the project, you're consenting to fill out questionnaires and also to fill out a safety questionnaire which actually says, asks you questions about whether you've been adversely affected by involvement in the project. Something that we would like to do is actually give more information back to participants about how the data is being used. So that's a key thing that I want to do, which is a bit different to some of the other PGP projects.
Interesting. And some of those projects have been running a little longer now, or for some time now. And is there any immediate feedback on those types of issues? Has anyone felt harm, or have there been insurance issues or anything negative so far that we know of?
Well, that was really interesting, I think, because in the US they've been doing the safety questionnaires for the last 6 years, and they used to do them quarterly, and now they've cut them down to 6 months and every 6 months. So, and they found that there's been no major incidents that have happened for those individuals who have actually been information altruists and put their information on the web, which I think is really interesting. And so I think we need to do more work on that and really kind of understand if these are real fears and risks, but also to engage participants, research, patients and citizens in genomics. And I think this is really an untapped resource. And it's really interesting that if we start to think about how much we need environmental evidence or other forms of evidence, which could be done through self-reporting, to enrich our understanding of kind of, why some people actually develop diseases and others don't. I think we're sort of missing a trick by not involving the people who actually have the disease, because they're the experts, really. They've got this great experience, and it's really interesting how sort of the scientific paradigm is really built around kind of having interesting case studies of disease, and people are seen as quite passive in that role. So they're not really seen as active partners. They're not actually seen as people who can really take all their energy and their interest in their condition and actually put it into research in a really positive way. So I'm really keen on how we sort of galvanise that energy and that interest, and really kind of make it so that it strengthens research and enables new innovative things to happen.
So I wanted to just end here by thanking you and asking you if you have any last words for us.
If I was going to say one sentence, I would say that we're actually undergoing a paradigm shift. And so I think things are going to be really interesting over the next 5 years, and how things change, and how the people involved in genomic research and innovation and clinical care. How all of that pans out will be really interesting.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.